just picking this up as I go, and I'm really good at looking at things and then figuring out what to say about them. Now that seems to be maybe my gift, if you want to call it like this. You may also call it some kind of curse, because you have to deal with all the stuff that you're seeing, and then you have to find a way to let it all out. Because what I'm seeing in this world is there's a lot of anger, right? So we all have emotions, and we're pushing them down. Some people get really angry at the state, and then they go to the streets, and then they start hating the police. But it's good to be aware of the police. But why do you need to hate them? Because what does the police do ultimately? Well, what the police does is they maintain some kind of order. And sure, you can say that, well, whose order? Well, that would be then the order of the state. And like I said in that previous video, Liars and Cheats, well, the state has an interest to maintain itself. And if there are a lot of people that are really angry, then the state is going to use force against people that use force. So if we want to really change something in the way things are going, we have to start speaking the truth. We have to show them how we feel. But we cannot let our emotions carry us away, and that's a very difficult thing. But you have to understand that if you would go and speak to a politician, these politicians know how to make you angry or how to draw out your anger, which means they can manipulate you. Why? Because a politician always stands there and talks eloquently. They know how to present themselves. Even when they are lying, they wear their suits, they look presentable, clean-shaven face. That's what the people like to see. A man that seems like he has manners. Of course, if he's lying to the public, how much manners can you have? But these people know how to speak in a way that pleases the ear, and they use their hands to support what they're saying, so it seems like it's legit. Although all they're trying to do is sell you shit. And they're lying. So what happens if you would find yourself in an interview? Maybe you have something to say, right? You want to say, I have something to say. And then you go and you find yourself in an interview. What's going to happen? You want to expose that the state is lying, and you want to get them to admit that they are lying about certain things. It's like you are able, the state says, now we have organic food. We have organic eggs, we have organic milk. And you as a gullible citizen go into the shop and you buy organic eggs. And then what? You go home and you eat those eggs and you think, oh, You know, these chickens are really happy and they living a good life. And then suddenly you hear reports that it's actually phony, that organic eggs aren't really organic eggs anymore. Because nobody wants to pay the price for organic eggs. And so you have people that produce organic eggs, at least that have a label, because they pay the label industry, yeah, the ones that give labels to things and say that's organic, you know, they just pay the money. And that's how the game is played. And you have to understand this, the game is played with money these days. And so if you then go to the public and you say, they're lying to us, then the public and the state, they're going to try to discredit you. They're going to try to push you into a corner. So if you're like really angry, and you feel like you're really righteous, and you're going around speaking truth, the government is lying, let's, you know, hack them all to bits. You know, that's not how it's supposed to happen. Because if you come with violence, you will also harvest violence. So you have to go into the room in a very you have to really be centered. You cannot give in to anger or fear or sadness. You know, if you stand in front of the camera and you start crying, or you run away because, you know, they're hammering you with their arguments, you're not going to stand a chance. And sure, they want to, you know, if you find yourself in a debate, what do they want? They want to, because you're their enemy. If you speak against what the state is doing, then you are the state's enemy. That's the truth. So what do they want to do? They want to plant fear into your heart. And they're going to scare you with the police force. They're going to scare you with their weapons, with their maze. They're going to scare you with, you know, we don't like you anymore. They're going to scare you with threatening you to put you into prison. And this is what keeps most people to sit around at home and do nothing. Because they're actually so afraid to step out of line that they rather just accept the way it is and never do anything to change anything at all. Because they actually gave up hope. And so I wanted to talk about diet. And what was that? Just have to look that up again. Because I always have to find my way back to the actual topic. Because otherwise I'm kind of losing it. I'm kind of losing it. Let's check. Oh yeah. Diet and clarity. That's it. That's the one. So what you want to be is you want to be clear in your mind. Because what we are facing is people who are very good at deceiving you. Which means they know how to lie. And they know how to lie so well that it will take everything you got to remember that they're lying. And to filter out what they're actually really saying. Sometimes you will find yourself in a debate or an interview, and they're going to ask you questions that have an intention. And when you answer these questions in a rush, because you want to show that, you know, I can hold my ground, right? And you're too eager to show that you're good. And then they ask you questions they can actually create a story with their questions, and they can lead you away from what you were actually trying to say, and they can get you to say things that make you look like a complete idiot. So sometimes it's better to answer a question with a question. So if somebody comes and asks you a question that's really disrespectful, and it really invades your privacy, you can ask a question back and say, okay, can I ask you a question in return? Like, is it okay to be disrespectful to me in order to paint an image for the public? And then they would say, what do you mean? And then you could elaborate on the question that they asked. Rather than answering the question, you're showing the public what the true intention behind the question was. Because if you're just answering the question, then you're like a mouse that went for the cheese and got caught in the trap. Because you were too eager to get to the cheese, right? Because you wanted to stand in front of the public, and actually you wanted to do good. But if you want to do good, you're easy prey. Because then you are a people pleaser, and they will use that. So if you answer all the questions that they're gonna ask you, you're easy prey. So sometimes you have to work hard to expose the people that are trying to expose you, because that's what they want. They want to show that, oh, he's not who he says he is. So they want to get you to a place where you're like a caged or a trapped animal, right? They want to debate you into a corner where you're gonna lose your shit, right? They're gonna apply pressure, and at one point you're gonna be like, "Rah!" Yeah, and then you've lost it. And then the public is gonna say, look at it, he's violent, he's a criminal, he's a liar, he says he wants to do and help, but all he does is, he's like really angry. And then they've got the image. And that's it then. To the general public, you're done. Because you lost against the people that they believe in. And that means you're just another one, bites the dust. Cheers. So diet in clarity, why I'm saying this is, if you want to change something in this system, you have to be very clear of your intentions. Why are you doing this? So you have to test yourself. Right? I was once in a position where I was writing the book of fear. I think that was that. I think I was writing the book of fear. And I was speaking with somebody who was 30 years older than me. Almost like a father figure. I spent quite a lot of time with him, and I actually quite liked him. But I also realized that in certain ways he tried to keep me small, right? He tried to push me down. And I knew from what he had told me that he himself wanted to write a book. But he never did. And now I was writing a book, and then he asked me a question. You have to test yourself. Why do you want to write a book? Like, what is your intention? That's actually all he said to me. And I think that he was truly afraid, why he wasn't writing his book is because he was afraid of his intention to write the book. And that's a very genuine thought. Because when you're writing a book because, I don't know, you just want money. You don't actually care what you're going to say in there. You just want money. Well, when you write a book because you just want money, they have you by the balls. Because you're just gonna turn out one of these people pleasers. And then you're just gonna feed the industry. So what is your intention? Do you want to be liked? Or do you want to speak the truth? Because if you want to be liked, you're just gonna say whatever they want to hear, and that's what politicians already do. Then you're just more of the same. But what you want is you want to speak the truth. And to see the truth, you have to have clarity. And in order to have clarity, you probably have to change your diet. And the same man that asked me that question also was the one that introduced me to the idea of a ketogenic diet and what that means. And before I ever heard about that, my diet was generally consisting of a lot of bread, a lot of yeast products. I would drink. At that time I already stopped drinking alcohol because alcohol makes you fuzzy. So never drink alcohol. Especially not if somebody invites you to their home, right? And then you drink alcohol. They can really easily manipulate you, right? They can feed you stuff and then they make you feel comfortable, and then they draw information out of you. Or they get you to say things that you maybe rather not tell them. So you have to be a bit smart. You have to be conscious of what's going on behind the scenes. Because in front of the scene is a politician saying we need electric cars. I'm just gonna get back to that. Or organic is really good, right? But behind the scenes is this whole game of corruption and lies and deceit. The politician is just the figurehead. He's just the one standing there and telling the lies. But the lie is happening in the background, right? That's the truth. Because truth is always there. The lie is we need electric cars to save the environment. But the truth is they want to make money. So in order to see that, you have to be very clear in your mind so that you can always see what's behind the words that are being said. What is behind the question that somebody is asking you? What is behind all these things? What is the true intention of what they are doing? And what is the true meaning behind the words and those hand gestures and everything they do? So what effect has diet on clarity? Yeah. So just to stick with that idea, you want to start a revolution or something. You want to revolutionize living. You want to revolutionize, people's ideas of movement, right? You want to revolutionize all kinds of things. A revolution doesn't necessarily mean you want to destroy the state, right? No, a revolution means that you are introducing a new concept or a new idea. But you don't do that with force. You do it by showing that it's possible. So in order to revolutionize the way people think, you first have to show that the way you think actually helped you to do something else. Because the way I think is revolutionary, because I'm more like a positive thinker. I look for solutions, right? Like with the Rubik's Cube, I have a problem, I wanted to solve it. I didn't know how, so I found a way to solve it. That worked for me. So if you manage to solve a lot of your problems, because another thing, I wanted to do workouts, I wanted to paint, I wanted to do all kinds of things, and I wanted to do this and feel good about it. But in order to get there, that you're actually feeling good about it, you have to work through a lot of your shit. You have to work through your trauma, you have to work through your anger, you have to work through your fear. And in order to see what is scaring you, what is angering you, And to see through the anger at the root of the problem and then change that, you need clarity, right? So in order for me to stand here and speak, I need to be clear about what I want to do right now. Because right now I was kind of drawn between, am I going to stand and speak now? Or am I going to do an art session? Because I have about 10 images that I already prepared. And now I could do another Instagram session, right? Where I just make these images and then put them out. But to be honest, right now I feel like standing here and I feel like talking. So I have clarity in my mind about what I want to do, what I want to do right now. And that means I can also speak my mind freely. And if somebody would come to me now and start asking me questions, you know, I could like engage with them because I'm actually paying attention, I'm focused. But also because the way I eat allows me to be focused. And sometimes it's better to be a bit hungry than to be so full with food all the time. Because when you're eating all the time, you know, your body is digesting. And that's gonna lower your consciousness from up here to down there. While you want to be up here. And to be up here, you also have to work with all these things like, right, it's not just diet, but it's also what needs do you have? And are these needs really important right now? You know, some people think they need to look at their phone to check their messages. And then they have like, you know, the phone is vibrating and the phone is giving off a sound when you get a message. And then they even go so far as to have like a flashlight that's like blinks so that you can never miss that you got a message. So their whole focus is always on, did I get a message? Did I get a message? You know, that's how their mind is working. So their focus is not on, okay, what do I actually need right now? It's on, did I get a message? Yeah. Or I want to watch movies. You know, that's I want. What you need is to stop watching movies and figure out your life. You know? So often we want things and we think that we need them, but what we need is actually something else, right? Sometimes we say, I want to have sex now. We even say, I need to have sex now. But it's actually not a need, it's a want. Because you don't need to have sex. You don't need to have sex. But if you think you need to have sex, then sex is keeping you trapped. And then you're gonna run around, and you're gonna run after women, and you're gonna run after your wife, and you're gonna stop living your life because all you want is to have sex. But what you need is to stop wanting so much. So some people, they say, you know, I want to eat pizza. But what you should do, is to stop eating pizza. That's what you really need, because pizza is putting a cloud over you. But some people want to be in that cloud. They want to feel numb. That's why people drink alcohol. They want to numb themselves. Because what happens when you have clarity? When you see clearly what's going on, well, it's a scary place, my friend. It's a very scary place. And that's what most people are trying to run away from. So, to open your third eye, if you want to call it that, and to cleanse your pineal gland, and to see clearly what is going on, you have to make certain choices. And some of these choices are dietary. And that's a very hard one, because people generally want to eat the things that they remember as making them feel good. So somebody drank, that's actually a funny thing, because what's coffee? Coffee, what does that do? makes you really angry, makes you really riled up. Because if you're a really heavy person, because of all the emotions, and then coffee is gonna do like this. But ultimately, it's going to burn you out. It's gonna burn you out. Because the reason you drink coffee is probably because you're really afraid. You're actually really anxious. And coffee is actually also keeping you in that state of anxiety. Because that's where you feel like you know what's going on. Like, you can actually start identifying with, right? And then you run around, you just get angry at everybody. And your diet can help you to stay like this. And that also means that you would have a very hard time to have a very, very intense debate about climate change. Because if you don't know how to hold your center because you're so high on coffee, they can just poke you, and you're just gonna be like, right? So, it's all connected. It's not just about diet, because the diet is a result of how you feel. Your diet is a manifestation of how you feel, or a consequence of how you feel. And a lot of people, they feel terrible or loaded or whatever. And so they use their diet to change the way they feel momentarily. And that's then the problem. You have to keep eating if you're trying to use food to make yourself feel better, which is actually saying you're using food to distract yourself from the way that you feel. And the way that you feel is maybe angry or unloved or whatever. And then you're using food to push these emotions away. You just push them away. You give your body something to digest, and for that time, you don't have to think about or feel about how you feel. And so, right now I feel a bit of hunger coming up, because I'm not used to not eating. I'm used to eating. So if I want to eat less, I have to get used to that. If I'm used to eating a lot of sugar, then I have to get used to eating less of it. Because now I'm used to feeling the way I feel when I eat sugar, which is like riled up, but it also means if I don't eat sugar, I'm like this. Then I eat sugar, I'm like this. If I don't eat sugar, I'm like this. So how do you suppose to have clarity if your state of mind is depending on the food that you ingest? So if you want to be like this and energetic, you rely on sources from the outside. If you're out of energy, you drink a coffee. Wow! Yeah? How long does a coffee last? Like really? Let's say maximum an hour. Probably more like half an hour. And what happens after that? Yeah? And then for some people that's not enough, so what do? They drink energy drinks. Or they eat a lot of sugar. Wow. Sometimes I do this to stretch my jaw. So they eat a lot of sugar, drink a lot of coffee. That's basically Western diet. They eat meat. Yeah? And all these things make you really heavy. I mean, meat takes about 3 hours to be digested. An apple, maybe like half an hour. but also you have to understand what you're taking in with your diet. The reason I say, I don't eat meat, why? Because the way that meat is being produced today is toxic. Anybody who knows anything about whatever should also know that water stores energy. And energy is a form of vibration, you could say. So energy can vibrate on different levels, right? Everything is working in a kind of a sinus wave. So if you raise animals in a toxic environment, which mass production is, because they don't live according to their nature, they live trapped. They cannot fulfill any of their needs. They're just being fed so that they grow really fast, and they're being treated like products. I mean, if you see a herd of wild oxen or something, they have a different, they have children playing around, they have cows and they have males and all that kind of stuff. There's like stuff going on, right? And then you look at mass production, it's just all the males in one place. They can't really move. They're just forced to eat all day. And then after 1 year, they're just being slaughtered. It's just terrible. And you're going to eat that. So you're going to eat food that is really stressed. You're going to eat food that is full of toxicity. And you're going to eat the food of a being that has a lot of needs normally, but they can't be fulfilled because it's kept as a slave. So it's a bit different with plants, because plants in that sense have a bit less needs. At least we think so. But monocultures clearly show that plants also do have needs. And that plants do react to a toxic environment by becoming more toxic themselves. So a lot of the food that we eat these days is generally toxic. But there are better choices to be made, is my opinion. So there are foods that are a bit better. But it takes time to get used to them. So I still eat eggs occasionally, because to me, I make some kind of pancake out of spelt flour and oats and eggs and water, and then I blend that, and then I make kind of a pancake, and then I eat it with peanut butter, or I eat it with, I don't know, whatever you want to put on it. It's like my bread. I eat this because I don't want to eat yeast. And I don't want to eat yeast because, that's going to go into my stomach, and the yeast is going to grow in my colon, and the yeast then demands me to eat more sugar. So it's going to disturb the system that I'm trying to maintain, where I feel like I have a lot of clarity, where I can receive visions so I know what to do, and I can see through the lies that are being told to me. So I have adjusted my diet to serve a purpose, and the purpose is, I want to do what I want to do. And when my diet is making me feel heavy, I cannot move freely, right? Because I'm always full, I'm always bloated, I'm always heavy in the stomach. And that is a manifestation of how I feel, right? Because I feel heavy, I eat heavy stuff. And that's then a vicious cycle. Because if I drink a lot of coffee to lift me up, that coffee is going to make me more and more toxic, because coffee is really acidic. So if you drink a lot of coffee, your body is going to become more toxic and more toxic and more toxic, and it's going to become harder and harder and harder to move like this. Because a toxic body is really heavy and it feels terrible, and that means when you start moving, it's going to be painful. And then you're going to adjust to the pain, the toxicity of your body, you're going to adjust to that, and you're going to crouch like this, and then you're going to walk around like everybody else. And you're going to be really rigid. What you need to do is work that toxicity out of you. Wow, it's really hard, I'm telling you. It feels like you're, because for the first time in your life, you might actually allow yourself to feel how terrible you feel. How terrible you feel. How terrible your body feels. How toxic all your muscles are. Because if you start to detoxify, there are so many things. Your body is toxic because you eat too much meat. Meat is very acidic. You drink too much coffee, you eat too much sugar. These things are all really acidic. What else? You eat too much of these like flour and stuff. It's also very acidic. Cake and stuff is acidic. Pancakes in a way also. It's not the best. That's why I like to eat oats. Why? Because oats have a lot of fiber, and they also transport excess acidity out of my system through my feces. That's one way why I use more oats. But also oats are a bit like sawdust. Oats don't have a lot of nutrition. What you actually want to do is you want to eat more protein, natural protein. And now we're coming to the more like a vegan ketogenic diet. I think a vegetarian ketogenic diet is already an improvement. I mostly eat vegetarian ketogenic. Actually, that's what I eat. Yeah, not really. Why? Because ketogenic would mean that I don't really eat carbohydrates at all. Then I wouldn't eat oats. I wouldn't eat rice. I wouldn't really eat potatoes because they have a lot of starch, which is also what all these yeasts and stuff feed on. I wouldn't eat bread at all. So ketogenic means that you eat a lot of greens, you eat a lot of vegetables, you almost eat no fruits, you eat nuts, certain nuts, but for example peanuts also have a lot of sugar in it. You would probably eat more like walnuts, but also a lot of chickpeas. They have a lot of protein. Sometimes I do feel like I want to eat meat. And when I feel like this, I eat a lot of chickpeas, and then that feeling is gone. So I actually didn't want meat, I wanted protein. Lentils, red lentils, brown lentils, these things are really nice. And then there are a lot of other things that you can eat. Buckwheat. Corn is not so good. It also makes you quite heavy because most corn is heavily genetically modified. And so is all that stuff like wheat. All that gluten. Normally wheat did not contain as much gluten. That's how it was bred. And so, right, it's about informing yourself of the foods that are actually more like ketogenic, and then to work with transitions, because maybe you're different than me, but I found it impossible from one day to the next to just stop eating sugar, to stop drinking coffee, and just stop all of these kinds of things. So with me, it's about transitions. You know, first I work on drinking less coffee. And if I manage for 1 month to drink no coffee, then at least I know how I feel without it. And that means that when I drink it again, I can make a comparison. How do I feel with it? How do I feel without it? You know, it's the same with your phone, right? Your phone, there's a lot of radiation going on. And that has an impact on the vibration of your body. That's why I keep my phone in this thing that I crocheted myself, because it's actually, I think it helps a bit with the radiation. And I usually have it somewhere where I can't see it. I also always have it, your internet is turned off unless I want to use it. I don't have any messenger apps on there. I also don't have any like Instagram or something on there. This I all do with my laptop. But I also don't follow people on Instagram. That's just what I do. Because I don't want to be, I don't want to really look at a lot of content from other people. I want to create my own content. And for that I also have to be clear, right? I have to make conscious decisions. When I wake up, what do I want to do? Do I want to move now? Do I want to make a recording? Do I want to leave the house? Do I want to stay inside? What do I want to eat? Do I want to eat or do I want to drink tea? So I changed my diet to something that serves me at the moment the best. So I make very easy choices. At the moment I eat, you could say a little bit too much still pancakes, but I do eat way less sugar than I used to. I used to really eat pancakes and drench them in sugar. But while I did that, I stopped drinking coffee. So I stopped drinking coffee. Now I occasionally drink coffee, but I have replaced drinking coffee with something else. Because a lot of people, they drink coffee to feel a certain way. So I stopped relying on coffee to feel how I wanted to feel, because I realized that if you drink a coffee to feel a certain way, there's a cost involved. And the coffee ultimately will make you more angry and more like, "Argh." But I wanted to feel more like, I'm here, right? So I drank coffee less. I stopped smoking cannabis. What else? I started eating less sugar. So these were all like transition. And what I realized often, if I drank a coffee once, I wanted to drink it again tomorrow. But then I just made a choice. I will drink a coffee now. But that means tomorrow I cannot drink coffee. And then I will resist the urge to drink coffee until I really feel like now I can drink one again. And until then, I would have to work myself. I would have to move, right? If I feel terrible, instead of drinking a coffee, I have to move my body, and that feels like, wow. And then you have, your muscles will be sore. But it's actually not that they're sore. I think it's rather, they're used to being in a certain way, but you want to get them flexible again. So the pain that you're feeling, your sore muscles, it's actually weakness that you have to drive out of your system. And that's just one way of replacing right? So the spine wants to be moved, right? You want to make this a habit, because maybe now your habit is eating certain foods, like eating pizza, eating meat, drinking Coke. Terrible thing to drink. all kinds of soda, these things. Just don't drink. Drink tea and water, that's it. You know, occasionally I drink maybe orange juice that I make myself, or I drink like lemon juice that I make myself. You can even mix that with water, right? That's what I drink. Well, mostly I drink tea and water and hot chocolate once in a while that I make with oat milk. I make oat milk, bit of water, right, and then I bring it to a boil with chocolate powder, and then I put spices inside. I work a lot with spices. Nutmeg also helps you, can energize you, but you also have to know how to channel that energy. And a lot of people, they don't know how to channel that energy. So if you ingest a lot of food that has a lot of energy, it actually makes you more heavy. Why am I always scratching my nose? Actually, I need to do breathing exercises. Yeah. So you can even replace eating with breathing. Because sometimes you feel like you have a weird feeling in your stomach. You can actually breathe instead of lumping food on top of it. You can actually breathe. Because often it's what accumulates in your stomach is like raw energy. That's the center where your energy starts to come into. And when you breathe, you start moving that energy and you start to heat up the fire. That's called tumo. T-U-M-M-O. That's like your inner fire. And what we mostly do is, you use like gasoline to keep the fire going. You drink coffee, you eat sugar, that's like gasoline. But you can also, right, breathe into your fire to keep it going, right? If your fire keeps going out, you keep breathing and then you put on a fresh log. So when your fire is going out, you can breathe, but at one point you probably have to eat something. But then what you eat is more like, okay, gasoline. It creates a lot of heat for a very short period of time. You're going to pour it on top of like whoosh. It's very hot, but it also burns up everything that you put on much quicker. Because the heat is really a lot, and maybe it makes you feel good for a while, but on the long run, you're going to run out of resources much quicker. So when you put on logs, it's like you eat sugar, it's more like gasoline. It burns up really quickly, it makes you like this for a while, but then it's going to be like this again, right? So you have to work much harder, you have to eat much more. You have to think much more about eating if you eat a lot of sugar and drink a lot of coffee. Because coffee is like gasoline and sugar is like spruce. So anybody who knows a bit about wood and fire, if you burn spruce, it has a lot of resin in there and that burns really quickly and it doesn't produce much heat. It's going to be gone very fast. Now protein is more like oak, right? So if you eat stuff that have more fiber and more protein, it takes longer and it creates a more even and a more stable heat. So if you eat, for instance, chickpeas, or you add maybe also coconut to your food, it's like more cooling. You eat lentils, buckwheat. Yeah, I don't really like quinoa so much. Because where does it come from, right? Also coconut, where does it come from? It's actually better to eat more local foods. But it's very hard at the moment. And if you're the only one eating local foods, you know, maybe at the moment it's better to just stick with what's available. That's how I feel. Because I also have other things to do than to just run around worrying about what's organic and not, because in the end I think most things aren't organic. And maybe I don't have enough money at the moment. So if I buy a lie, you know, I buy a lot of organic and I think, oh, that's so much better, but in the end I'm financing the same shit. And I'm just wasting my money. I could just stick with the conventional food and then work towards first finding stability in a new way to eat, then also worrying about all that organic stuff. So what I found is that eating gluten puts like a cloud, a fog into your head. And when you have such a fog into your head, you cannot think clearly. You cannot make very good decisions. You cannot go out and move easily because you're heavy. Because gluten is glue. It's what makes, if you make a pizza dough, what makes it stick together. It's all that gluten. When you eat that, it's gonna glue, you know, it's glue in your stomach. It's like very like spongy, hard to digest stuff. And your body has to work very hard to get rid of that. And it glues to the walls of your colon. You know, it's like making everything sticky. And then your colon cannot really digest. And then you're gonna fart a lot. You're gonna become very bloated. And then at the same time, you know, you have all that yeast in your system. And that wants you to eat sugar all the time, so you're trapped. Because you think you want to eat sugar, but it's actually the yeast. And that means your colon is deciding who you are. You allow your colon to decide who you are, which means you're not up here, you're actually down here. You're being controlled by your stomach. And that makes you weak. Because if your stomach controls you, how are you supposed to be up here and moving, right? How are you supposed to do that if you have like all that weight, you know, or all that heaviness? You know, if you carry all of that around, how are you supposed to be like this? Like if I do this, everything's cracking. Because my joints, everything is tight. So I have to get moving. You know, my hands are really cold right now. I'm wearing socks because my feet are really cold. So I have to get moving. I have to move that. And in order to move that, I have to start somewhere. And the best part to start is your diet. Start with your diet because that's the major thing that keeps you down. Because you eat things that you remember from your childhood maybe. Maybe you felt good eating cake or bread because that's what your mother gave you or your father gave you. Or that were the only times where you felt like something to celebrate, like your birthday, right? At your birthday you always got cake. It was something special and you're like, oh nice, I got a cake. And the rest of the year, you know, nobody paid attention to you. But on your birthday, here you have cake, right? And then you feel good. You know, I don't really celebrate my birthday because every day is like a birthday. And why? Because every day I pay attention to myself. I pay attention to my needs, to how I feel. And that means that I make choices depending on what I really need, right? I make choices how I really feel If I feel today I need more comfort, I need to take care of myself, then I drink a hot chocolate, then I rest a bit. But if I feel like today I'm really weak and lazy, I have to push myself a little. But I also have to work towards that. I have to work to a point where I have more energy, where I can actually do this and enjoy it. That's a challenge. You have to outgrow your own weakness, your own melodrama. So, people, they live in these houses and they have a radiator. And they keep that, in winter, they keep it on hot. And the colder it gets, the hotter they have it. Instead, they could be doing this whenever they start feeling cold. But they don't do that because they're lazy. And they, because their focus is more on earning money, feeling important, earning money and earning money and earning money. That's what everybody just thinks about. And because they're so busy earning money, they don't do anything else. They just, everything for them is a quick fix. They have a need for food. What do they eat? They just go and they get a bread, and then they just put jam on top of it, and then they drink a coffee. They just stuff the food into themselves, and then they run back to their desktop or screen so that they can keep earning money. So they're wasting their life in front of a screen because they are greedy with money. Why don't you try being greedy with life? You can be really greedy with life, but nobody is that. Why aren't you a bit greedy with nature, right? Why do we all have to be greedy with money? You can be greedy with nature. You can go out in the nature and I say, I love nature so much. I want more of it. And then you start planting trees because you want more forests. Because that's actually what cleans the whole, that's what keeps this whole show going. So why don't we try being a bit greedy with things that are actually alive and that do something? My screen does nothing. It's dead. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't engage with you. It's just a screen. I cannot go into it. I cannot talk with it. It's just a dead screen. But a tree is like living. It's doing stuff. It's channeling energy. It's channeling water. It's transforming toxic air into breathable air, and it makes rain, which is good for crops and all that kind of stuff. But all we care about is money, right? And that's also part, diet and clarity. You start working on your diet and you start working on your beliefs and your habits. Why do you think money is so important? And what would you do with money if you would have it? Like in that song, Fiddler on the Roof from the movie, I think it's actually a theater play, but I watched it as a movie. If I was a rich man, and what is he singing? If I was a rich man, I don't recall the whole song, but it's like in essence, I'm gonna get a house, and the house is going to have stairs, and one stair leads nowhere just for show. And I'm going to have a lot of chickens and a lot of geese or something, so that the whole town can hear that I'm a rich man, right? It's like I'm going to be rich and I'm going to rub it into your face that I'm rich, so that everybody knows I'm rich. Well, that's why most people want to be rich, so that everybody thinks, oh, that guy's rich, and then they have to show it to them by having a really fancy car, I'm rich. That's who you became now, complete douche, who walks around and thinks he's better than everybody. I'm rich. I'm really rich. Yeah, but how do you feel about that, right? How do you feel if I come with a hammer, bam, destroy your car. You're gonna be really angry. Why? It's just a car, man. Don't you get that? It's just a car. You thought you paid some money for a car that makes you feel good, but if I take that car away, you're gonna feel miserable. That's how it is. That is how it is. You're gonna feel miserable without that car. So you attach who you think you are to a car. That makes you dependent on a thing that can never love you. Then you love that car because the car is like, oh, I love you. But you don't have time to spend with your children. Like, you spend more time cleaning your stupid car and caring about your car. And why do you do that? Because the car will never abandon you. So the car is a product of your fear. Because you're afraid to love people. You're afraid to open up to your wife. You're afraid to open up to your children even. And so you rather open up to something that can never give you anything but toxic air. Just nothing. You can sit there like, clean the car, and I just want to punch you in the face for that. Because that's how I've been raised. Yeah? By people who care more about keeping the walls clean, right? They care more about all these objects, right? They care more about that everything looks neat than about life. And that's why all these houses that we're building today, you know, before we used to use natural materials, clay, that kind of stuff, you know, hay, wood, that kind of stuff. And what are we using today? You know, all this neat and perfect material that doesn't really live. What you want to have is a house that can breathe. But we wrap our houses in plastic and stuff that doesn't make any sense. You know, we should live in a natural way. But we don't want that because we're afraid of nature. That's why we keep destroying it. So we have to change that. In order to realize what we need to change and what you need to change, you have to become clear in here. Which is why your diet has a real impact, my man or woman. So you start changing your diet, you start changing yourself, and you start to live more. Because maybe the food is not as important as you thought it is. But it was what you had to do because there's so much food available, so let's just eat. Well, then you're gonna lay around like a lazy walrus all day. But I don't want to be a walrus. You know? I don't want to be a polar bear all my life that just stuffed himself with a walrus and then just is so full that he's just standing around like this. You know, I don't want to be like this all the time. Because the polar bear, most of the year, he's walking around, he's sniffing stuff, he's like standing in the wind. You know, he's hunting, he's engaging with other bears, I don't know, he's mating, he's, you know, digging up stuff. He's not just every day eating until he's full. You know, he does that once in a while when he's really hungry. So maybe we should start becoming really hungry once in a while, which is then fasting. You know, some people say then, when you're thirsty, it's already too late. You should have drunk a lot of water all the time. But you can also drink too much water. I've heard recently, and I've read that in a book, that some people actually become fat because they drink too much water. Because everybody's different. Some people maybe need to drink a lot. Some people don't need to drink as much. I once fasted for 4 days. I didn't drink any water and I didn't eat any food. And after 4 days, I was still peeing. Because I eat so much salt, I used to eat a lot of salt, and salt makes the body accumulate water. So you feel thirsty because you're accumulating all that water that actually your body doesn't have available. And then we go to the sauna and we sweat, and our sweat is really salty, and we say, oh, that's normal. No, it's not normal. That's because you're eating so much salt. You see, you become like the salt sea. A salty sea, right? And salt isn't that good for the body either. But you have the salt industry, so they want to make you eat more salt, because that's how they make money, right? So they're not interested in you, they just want you to eat salt. If people aren't eating salt, they're gonna think about, how can we get people to eat more salt? Yeah. Like imagine, here in Germany, we have this disgusting habit that whenever there's a bit of frost on the streets, you know, cars are driving around and they spread this really toxic salt everywhere. And this salt has also like really strong acid in there, so that it can melt all the ice and snow so that the cars can drive safely. And that is all going into nature, of course, and makes nature in itself more toxic. Plus all the resources that we're just spreading because we want to drive around in cars because we're too lazy to walk. I mean, while I'm standing here, there's like one car, another car. There's like no time of the day where no car is driving here. And that's the air that we breathe. Just think about it for a bit. So clarity means you actually have to look at these things. That's how I spend my day. I observe. I stand here, I observe people walking down. I see most of them walk around with their phones, mostly young people. They have these weird like Bluetooth, AirPod bullshit things in their ear. And then they walk around with their phone like this. They don't pay attention to anything. They don't know what's going on because they're escaping. They escape real life because real life to them is, I feel terrible. So it's up to you to change that. You have to make a choice. There's another one, kid walking like this. Yeah, and if I would go to him, he probably wouldn't understand what I'm trying to tell him. Or maybe he would. But there's no happiness. There isn't even sadness when you're in your phone. So you don't feel anything. Well, he was wearing glasses. At least he was looking around. Wow. Okay, and there's another thing I wanted to say, that if you eat very toxic, you eat a lot of food that makes you acidic. So like I said, coffee, sugar, meat, all that kind of stuff. Maybe you don't have heartburn, but that doesn't mean that your body isn't acidic. Why is that? Because the body has certain methods to deal with too much acid. And how your body deals with it, it's storing it in the cells of your body. That's where all the acid is being stored. And that means that when you do get heartburn, you are already so acidic that your body couldn't store it anymore. So your whole body is already so full with acid that now you're starting to feel it. You know, it's like it cannot compensate it anymore. And then people go to the doctor and then they say, I have heartburn. And then a lot of doctors just give them stuff like omeprazole, which is a acid production inhibitor. It's an acid production inhibitor. I just want to Now just look at that. I just want to see. Omeprazole is one of these medications. Jesus. I just want to know how it is officially. Ah, yeah. It's a proton pump inhibitor. And now, if you know something about, I think it's H+. It's a proton. You have electrons, which are negatively charged particles. And then you have a proton, it's like a positively charged. And that means if you eat a lot of acidic stuff, so you have a pH, right? The pH of your body. If it's 14, I think it's very alkaline. Well, that I don't really know, but read it up. I think because proton is positive, and that's what makes acid really acidic, possibly, maybe. So you can either be too alkaline or too acidic, it goes either way. Most people in this system are too acidic. They're eating too much things that make them acidic. And so you have to start counterbalancing that. And that means once you have heartburn and you go to a doctor and they tell you to just take omeprazole, that's a dead end. Because when you take that, your heartburn goes away, but you will probably keep your diet the way it is. Plus, that also means that if you take omeprazole, it inhibits the acid production of your system, and then you get to a point where you are lacking acid because you also need acid to digest and to kill bacteria and stuff. You need acid for that. So if you inhibit the proton production, you will have a lack of acid, and then your body will work extra hard to produce more and more acid, which means eventually you will have to take more and more of this omeprazole, because then it's a vicious cycle. So you're trying to get rid of acid, you take something that blocks it, but your body works extra hard to have enough acid. So you also need acid. So how do you do it then? Some people take a lot of Rennie or bicarbonate of soda, which neutralizes acid temporarily. So you can work with these things for a while, but at some point you have to take responsibility for the way you eat, because you're the one creating this. You are the one creating your toxic body, because you are ignorant of what food does in your system. And so how do you deal with it? Well, you have to start experimenting, and I've already told you, a more ketogenic diet is much better. And that takes time. That takes a lot of practice. First you have to learn how to cook. Vegan or ketogenic, you have to learn how to cook this. And you have to get used to implementing this kind of food into your daily routine. That takes a lot of time and a lot of practice, because you will always try to run back to the things that you used to eat. And that's a real problem for a while, but it becomes easier. For me, it took me probably 2 years now, or 3 years to figure that one out. Once I started to think about it, right? To make different choices, but then I always had times where I just couldn't make these choices because it became too complicated with all the other things that were happening in my life. So sometimes I allowed myself to simply keep drinking coffee because I was focusing more on doing art. And then bit by bit I learned to also do art without coffee. But first I wanted to get good at doing art, and then I did that less. Then I stopped with the coffee. So work with transitions. Make one choice. I'm going to work on my coffee addiction, and then you're going to work on that. But you already know, okay, but you also want to work on your sugar addiction. You're going to work on that as well. But first you're going to work on your coffee addiction. Because as long as you're addicted to these things, you cannot have a clear thought in your mind. Because these things make you heavy, these things impact how you feel, and these things impact your choices, right? It's like the choice between going for a walk or eating. Maybe you should rather go for a walk, but instead you're going to eat. You know, eating is an easy solution to make yourself feel better, while going for a walk, you know, takes a lot of resolve and a lot of strength. And it's going to train your body, while eating just does nothing. You know, I've tried, I have eaten a lot of food, but in the end, it doesn't fulfill me. Eating food is just like petrol on a fire. It cannot really warm your heart. What warms your heart is opening up to yourself. And that's going to feed and nourish you much more than anything that you can put into this system. And these choices are hard-earned, and I pushed through a lot of them. Some of them are still taking shape, but I realize it's getting much easier. But I also had a goal, right? I know where I wanted to get. And so sacrificing things for your goal is much easier than to just sacrifice them without knowing why. And that's why I always experimented, right? I did a 7-week ketogenic diet. You know, I did that for 7 weeks, and at the same time I did a anorganic sulfur cleanse. And that gave me a feeling where I realized, okay, this is how I feel if I don't eat gluten, if I don't eat sugar, if I don't eat any of that stuff. This is how I can feel. I felt really good. And then I ate gluten again and these things, and I went back to feeling miserable and heavy. And that was like 2 years ago maybe, that I first did that 7-week thing. And it took me until now to work to get back to that. Because it's not just diet, right? Diet, like I said, is a symptom of how you feel or how you want to feel. So you have to work to feel like that with your own strength. And I think that's all I had to say. Diet and clarity. You see, it's a very wide topic, like everything. You know, you cannot narrow these things down. You know, also when I stand here, you know, I often stand like this because I want to humble myself. That if you talk, you know, if I talk to you, you feel like, you know, I'm not overkill, but I am. You know, I'm like, I have quite a lot of energy. If I channel it right, which means, like, if I'm heavy here, then all my energy is here instead of here, or here, or here, right? So I have to work on that. You know, I stand a lot. Because when I stand and I get weak, I actually realize that I'm weak. But if I'm lying all the time, you know, I don't use my body. I don't feel if I'm weak if I'm lying on a couch. So if I move, I will start to feel where I'm tense, right? And that's it, right? You want life to be intense. You want life to be like, come on, man, let's do something. You want life to be a challenge. And so figuring out your diet is a challenge. You fight through your own shit. That's how you have to see it. That's how you engage with yourself. You know, you fight because you want to stand on top of the mountain and say, I did it. I did it. That's what you want to do. It's like the can-do mentality instead of having the I can't do anything. Yeah, maybe that worked for your parents. Maybe that worked for whoever. But you are your own person. And so you have to make your own choices. So if you simply eat what everybody else eats, you're just a copy. Figure it out. Figure it out.